The grand ballroom of the opulent hotel was alive with music and laughter, its air crisp with the scent of fresh orchids and champagne. Glittering chandeliers cast a golden glow over guests dressed in designer gowns and tailored suits. Among them, Alice Palmer moved discreetly, her uniform a stark contrast to the glamour surrounding her. A humble cashier employed by the hotel, Alice was part of the skeletal staff present to ensure the evening service ran smoothly. Her presence was deliberately muted, she was there to blend, not to be noticed. The grandeur of the event was both captivating and intimidating, a constant reminder of the world that lived just beyond her grasp. Still, she went about her task with the quiet efficiency that had earned her job in the first place, meticulously overseeing the labels and numbers on each bottle she scanned. Her heart skipped when the centerpiece of the evening, a bottle of vintage champagne, was ceremoniously brought out. The bottle held a status of its own, its arrival heralded by appreciative murmurs. But moments after it was served, a ripple of panic raced through the assembled elite. The billionaire host's voice cut through the crowd, accusing Alice outright of swapping the prestigious bottle with something far less desirable, a bottle of contaminated water. The shock left Alice immobilized under the sudden scrutiny. Dressed in finery, guests turned from their whispered conversations, now openly eyeing her as the culprit. Her cheeks flushed with heat as ridicule and scorn circled her like vultures. Powerless protests fell on deaf ears as she was escorted out under suspicion, her once faint hope of acceptance now trampled, leaving only the stark certainty of her innocence behind. Alice Palmer retreated to her modest apartment, a world away from opulence. The walls, painted a pale, chipping blue, seemed to close in as she sank into the worn-out couch that cradled her defeat. The evening's events replayed in her mind, the glares, whispers, the billionaire's authoritative accusation echoing endlessly. Her heart ached with the humiliation, stoked by the fear that this might mean the loss of the job that was her lifeline. The hours passed, fragile moments of despair blending into a sleepless night. The room was thick with silence, punctuated only by the occasional creak of a floorboard, a stark contrast to the relentless cacophony inside her head. When dawn finally seeped through the old curtains, it brought little comfort. Each ray of light seemed to highlight her misfortune rather than dispel it. Her simple breakfast sat untouched. The toast, buttered meticulously, grew cold and soggy on the plate. She traced a finger over the table's worn wood, her mind drifting back to better days. She had once been a promising student, filled with dreams that stretched wide as the sky. Straight as and enthusiastic teachers had predicted a bright future. But life turned capriciously, taking her mother's health as ransom and demanding Alice be the caregiver. Alice paused, looking around the small apartment that had been both sanctuary and prison following her decision to leave school and take care of her ailing mother. It was a home she had built out of necessity, a safety net woven from shared hardships. She recalled nights studying by flickering lamplight, biology textbooks shadowing her dreams as she stayed up charting the complex landscape of medical terms required to understand her mother's condition. As the solitary fan whirred in the corner, her heart tugged towards the piano standing by the window. Dust gathered on the once-loved keys, but as Alice touched them, melody fragments and memories unfurled, pieces of dreams she had set aside. From her time as a promising music student to her current role as a cashier, her life had contracted into something narrow and hard. The entry into the hotel job had been something of a reprieve. Standing behind the counter, surrounded by the glittering illusions of wealth, Alice had found her own rhythm, the simple elegance of duty allowing her a sense of purpose. The camaraderie she shared with her co-workers had offered a semblance of belonging, the staff forming quiet alliances of mutual respect not spoken but understood. This tiny, hard-won dignity was now threatened, teetering on the knife's edge of someone else's manipulation. She sat by the window, allowing the city's hum to fill the silence. Her mind churned with worry. What if she lost the job? Unemployment stretched behind her like a gaping void, ready to swallow the remnants of her pride. Conversations with the HR department ricocheted through her thoughts, their non-committal tones ringing alongside assurances that rang hollow in her ears. Scenes from the gala played involuntarily on loop, laughing guests, the clinking of crystal, the immediate shift from warmth to suspicion. Alice could still feel the cold, judgmental eyes scanning her, tearing through her defenses with ease. Unfounded prejudice welcomed by a community she'd hoped to serve effectively and conscientiously. Despite the gravity of her reality, a stubborn ember of determination kindled within her. She needed to find a way through the fog of accusation. She remembered her mother in the hospital, always telling her to search for the silver lining, the hidden core of strength that lived within persistence. Alice doubted but couldn't afford to dismiss such advice now. Her mother's unwavering belief might yet guide her to clarity. As the day dragged on, Alice sought solace in simple routines, tidying the apartment, watering a collection of fading potted plants, rehearsing her plea for truth. The phone remained silent beside her, a constant source of tension now, its lack of resolve echoing vividly in her living space. From deep in the corners of her memory, she plucked the faces of each guest she could remember from the event, scrutinizing their expressions for traces of guilt or deceit she'd not noticed. The unjust accusation felt like barbed wire around her thoughts, its restraint an ever-present reminder of the hurdles she had to overcome. The room grew shadowy as dusk fell, carrying with it a promise of both despair and hope. All she could do was wait, and think, and hold on to that ember for dear life, fighting to warm the depths of her resolve. The empire of opulence and power that accused her seemed insurmountable, a wall more formidable than any physical blockade. In this unyielding quiet, full of ghosts of melodies and half-remembered dreams, Alice realized she had two choices. She could allow the suffocating swirl of hopelessness to drive her back into hiding, or she could rally. A faded photograph on the shelf, her younger self smiling confidently beside her mother, seemed to echo that sentiment. Alice pressed closer to it, feeling the cool touch of the frame against her fingertips, grounding her in warmth and resolve that defied her despondence. She repeated her mother's favorite mantra softly into the dimming room, words that formed an anchor against her fears. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the silent voice that whispers at the end of the day, "I will try again tomorrow." It was then, as she embraced the resolve to seek the truth bravely, that the night's despair began to loosen its hold just a little. The notion of justice, though fragile, grew into an insistent spirit, soft against her tired heart yet undeniably fierce, a whisper that promised redemption if she only stepped into the fight with belief in her own untold story. Several days passed in the fog of uncertainty, each clock tick a reminder of her precarious position. However, Alice found strength in routine, methodically preparing herself to face whatever came next. She cleaned, sorted through bills, and organized closets, each mundane task a small act of defiance against her chaos. Then, one night, just as the feeble glow of dawn began to creep into her modest apartment, a memory surfaced with startling clarity, a fleeting detail from the gala evening. During the chaos, she had noticed a strange scent on the contaminated water bottle, something that seemed peculiar given it should have been odorless. It was faint, almost ethereal, like lemon blossom. The realization sent a thrill through her weary frame, a breadcrumb of truth in the fog of doubt. Grasping at this fragment, she knew she needed more than just this faint recollection to clear her name. It was a starting point, not a conclusion. Brimming with a cautious hope, she decided to call the hotel manager. The phone rang with a rhythmic insistence before finally connecting. Yet, as she laid out her case, her voice steady but fervent, the manager's response was cold, dismissive. They insisted the issue was resolved, advising her to let it go, a brutal reminder of the power disparity between them. Alice hung up, frustration knotting her stomach into a hard ball. She briefly considered leaving it alone, retreating into obscurity where the whispers couldn't reach her, but then she remembered that emboldening scent of lemon blossom. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, encouraging her to persevere, to untwist every mystery until the truth lay bare. Determined, Alice decided to return to the scene. She dressed carefully, embracing anonymity in a simple outfit, blending into the bustling streets like a shadow. It was mid-afternoon when she arrived at the hotel, the entrance still grand, as if mocking her previous shame. Taking a deep breath, she walked in, her presence unassuming amidst the thriving lobby. She made her way to the service staff quarters, strategically avoiding management. It was there she found Mark, a junior waiter she'd befriended during her time behind the cashier counters. Kind-hearted and empathetic, he listened intently as she relayed her story, eyes widening with each revelation. He confessed to having noticed strange behavior from the management assistant, the billionaire's personal aide, who had spent an unusual amount of time alone near the beverage station just before the unveiling of the vintage champagne. Encouraged by this new insight, Alice asked Mark if there was any way to access security footage from that night. Mark hesitated, aware of the potential consequences, yet he saw the earnestness in Alice's eyes. As they conspired, the alley behind the hotel became their clandestine meeting space, each whispered word a building block toward redemption. While Mark arranged discreet entry to the surveillance room, Alice spent her evening scouring social media, searching tirelessly through tagged images and videos from the gala night. Most were frivolous, showcasing guests' predilection for brilliance and excess, but a few captured something more useful, a snapshot here, a short video there, revealing the assistant near the champagne table just minutes before the swap was discovered. When Mark finally signaled that he had secured access to the footage, Alice's heart pounded in her chest. The room was dimly lit, filled with the low hum of machinery and an air of conspiratorial suspense. Together, they watched the tapes, scanning each frame with hawk-like focus. It was nearly dawn when, finally, the footage showed the assistant switching bottles with a swift, furtive movement that spoke volumes. The excitement of discovery was tempered by the realization of what needed to be done. The evidence was damning, but presenting it to the powers that be would require careful handling to ensure she wasn't silenced or dismissed yet again. But in that tiny room, the grains of truth she had gathered shone brightly against the backdrop of deceit. With the newly acquired proof in hand, Alice's resolve solidified into something unshakable. She thanked Mark, whose willingness to take a risk on her behalf had brought clarity to her beleaguered soul. Her eyes reflected gratitude as she whispered her thanks, knowing that she would never stand alone with people willing to see her, truly, as she was. They emerged into the light of early morning, the city's rhythm picking up as people began their day, life relentlessly moving forward. Yet to Alice, the world seemed different, imbued with new hope, allowing her to stand taller than she had in weeks. She cherished every moment of newfound strength, reflecting on the journey ahead now cleared of doubt. The weight of unjust guilt once coiled tight around her heart had begun to lift, finally allowing her to envision a path forward where justice and truth weren't just dreams but attainable realities. This time, Alice Palmer knew she was armed not just with the truth but also with the will to use it, vowing to restore her name and reclaim the respect she had earned through years of honest work. As she stepped out onto the street, determination fueled each step, with only one thought driving her forward: justice would not be stolen from her, not now, not ever. On the day of the charity event hosted by the same billionaire who had wrongfully accused her, Alice stood outside the Grand Hotel once more. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, the weight of proof solid in her pocket, a USB drive containing the incriminating footage. This event represented her chance to clear her name publicly. Her appearance was unassuming, dressed in a simple but neat outfit. The air buzzed with anticipation as guests filed inside, undeterred by the lingering scent of autumn. The ballroom, alive with chatter and elegant displays, was a stark contrast to the turmoil she had weathered. Yet, today, Alice was not merely a specter of shame but an agent of truth. Inside, the event unraveled with grandeur, laughter mingled with the soft strains of live music. Alice observed the ebb and flow of attendees, patiently measuring her approach. She was prepared, not just for the confrontation but to handle the potential backlash as she planned to showcase the truth in front of those who had once scorned her. At the appointed time, the billionaire rose to speak, addressing the gathered philanthropists with his usual flair. Alice watched as he moved confidently across the stage, a symbol of power and prestige. But beneath his polished exterior lay the remnants of a lie, one she intended to dismantle. As the speech drew to a close, Alice discreetly approached the event's technical director, a sympathetic staffer she had reasoned with earlier. He nodded subtly, acknowledging their plan. As the next speaker took the stage, he flicked a switch, dimming the lights briefly before a projection appeared on the large screen strategically placed around the ballroom. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the video played, the assistant's clandestine switch, the evidence undeniable and vivid against the darkness. The room fell silent, shock transforming into palpable tension. The billionaire stood frozen, his charisma abruptly dulled by the sudden surge of truth. Alice watched the crowd shift, whispers quickly rising from all around her, growing into a murmur of disbelief and outrage. The assistant's face, panic-stricken and pale, hovered like a specter caught in the spotlight of his own deception. It wasn't just an error laid bare but a deliberate act of subterfuge, an effort to sabotage and discredit. The billionaire's confusion was quickly followed by irritation, then panic geared by the unraveling of his own understanding. The guests, once buoyant and distracted by their elegance, now turned judgmental eyes toward the stage, torchbearers of social justice honed by raw revelation. Alice remained standing as a cascade of power shifted in the room. It was a tide no one could impede. Guests turned suspicious attention toward the assistant, their whispers sculpted by disdain, and began to unmask the hidden narratives woven into their privileged lives. The assistant's attempts to explain or remonstrate were futile, each word a feeble thread snapped under the scrutiny of fact. The billionaire's initial surprise transformed into a blend of anger and regret, aware now of the careless condemnation he had imposed in the wake of the unfounded accusation leveled at Alice. The staffer who had helped Alice took advantage of the commotion to draw attention to her, gently announcing the correction on behalf of management, acknowledging the evidence that had now been shared. Apologies were offered swiftly, sincere or staged, it mattered not, as their impact began to correct the injustice. Alice could feel her own pulse steady, a reflection of the justice restored, the truth's power embracing her like a long-lost ally. Her courage had conjured a reversal in how the narrative flowed. She was no longer outcast, but central figure, the invisible now vividly illuminated against a backdrop of lies. As the crowd reacted, Alice remained composed, her presence a clarion against the confusion. Though discomfort primed some to return to their social escapism, no longer could they ignore the festering underbelly of such exclusive gatherings, false perceptions and vicious judgments laid raw. The billionaire faced the audience once more, this time contrite but determined to right his misguided wrath. Public acknowledgement was offered to Alice, words dipped in sincerity while acknowledging the breach of trust perpetuated. She was invited to stand beside him as a symbol of integrity that withstood baseless condemnation. The assistant, meanwhile, was hurriedly escorted out, his privileged deceit expelled from the event's sanctity, leaving behind echoes of uncertain futures devoid of honor. Alice's heart swelled not with triumph alone but with humility, leading her to extend empathy where judgment had isolated her before. Her name, cleansed of the slander, now became synonymous with determination and the pursuit of truth against formidable odds. Her gaze swept the room as she thanked those who offered genuine understanding, her actions resonating with a newfound respect rather than skepticism. The once tight-knit elite found themselves unwound, transparent less by fortune or prestige but by personal integrity as they extended an olive branch of reformed judgment. When the time to leave came, Alice did so with grace, her departure a soft exhale, conjuring closure in its wake. The encounter, once formidable as an ocean's roar, had receded beneath the strength of her own conviction, and as she stepped from the glimmering hall into the evening's soft scent, she embraced the freedom restored, a silver garland against the dusk's promise. The fallout from Alice's daring revelation was swift and decisive. Within days, the billionaire's assistant was not only fired but faced widespread public disgrace. His attempts to downplay the deception fell flat as media outlets pounced on the scandal with greed, branding him as the architect of a failed sabotage. Inside the hotel where Alice had once felt the stinging arrows of undeserved blame, the atmosphere had shifted. Her reinstatement was announced with great fanfare by the management, who were eager to showcase their commitment to integrity and transparency. They offered her a promotion to supervisor, recognizing her competence and strength under pressure. When Alice arrived at work, the applause from her colleagues was sincere, infused with newfound respect. Her path had been arduous, her descent into doubt harrowing, but she had emerged victorious. She stepped into her new role with an authority she had earned, embracing the challenge of leadership with quiet confidence. The billionaire himself sought a private meeting with Alice. In a sunlit office, overlooking the city that bustled endlessly on, he offered a heartfelt apology. He spoke of his own reflection over the past weeks, how he realized the ease with which he had cast judgment, blinded by privilege and power. Alice listened, considering her response carefully. Accepting the apology with grace, she politely yet firmly expressed the hope that others might learn from this saga, that truth and diligence should never be overlooked by superficial appearances. The billionaire nodded, promising to reform his ways and remain more vigilant to the missteps of his entourage. Their encounter ended on a note of mutual understanding, if not friendship. As the story unfolded in the public domain, Alice's courage became a beacon for others who faced similar battles against injustice. Her tale was one of perseverance and redemption, inspiring many to stand firm in pursuit of their own truths. Invitations to speak at events and interviews began pouring in, yet she remained grounded, ably balancing her new responsibilities with a quiet humility that endeared her to many. Her relationship with her colleagues blossomed as they worked together with renewed unity. They shared tasks and laughter, creating a sense of community that was stronger than ever before. Even those who had once been slow to defend her showed their support, learning from her example, their prejudices challenged and evolved. Alice's days now hummed with purpose. She dedicated herself to raising standards within the hotel, meticulously implementing training initiatives that emphasized value, empathy, and respect. Her efforts were not confined to her own redemption but extended toward uplifting others, cultivating an environment where everyone, regardless of position, felt included and valued. At home, Alice found solace and tranquility at the piano. Her fingers caressed the keys once more, music spilling into the space, filling it with hope and light. In those gentle moments, the tumultuous storm she had weathered faded, replaced by an introspective calm and a reminder of her own resilience. Her mother, still a presence though frail, beamed with pride at the transformation she witnessed. The bonds of love and care continued to anchor Alice, pushing her toward greatness while keeping her grounded. They shared quiet evenings filled with stories and laughter, their relationship enriched by the trials they'd faced together. Alice's journey, once marred by misjudgment, had turned into a powerful narrative, a reflection of inner strength. She walked through the hotel, her steps echoing softly against marble floors, unfazed by the opulence that once threatened to overshadow her presence. When she opened her office each morning, sunlight streaming in through grand windows, she knew she belonged. On the street, passers-by who recognized her from headlines caught her eye with nods of acknowledgement or words of encouragement. Alice embraced these encounters, her humility never wavering, yet her spirit alight, knowing her journey had resonated with others, casting ripples that spread beyond her immediate sphere. The moment she stepped outside, onto the bustling sidewalks or into the welcoming ambience of a cafe, people greeted her with the warmth of genuine connection. She discovered a community of those who believed in her, supporting her not just as a part of the hotel's fabric but in a broader tapestry where justice and integrity were valued beyond wealth and status. As she closed each day, stepping onto a path tinged with the hues of dusk, she marveled at the transformation she had undergone. She was no longer the simple cashier they had condescended to, nor the invisible cog in a machine of wealth. She was an emblem of empowerment, her hardships transmuted into strength, her story imprinted onto the world like a melody that lingered long after silence. Hers was a victory of honesty over deceit, a testament to courage fiercely held in the face of adversity. Alice Palmer moved forward not just renewed but reinvigorated, her head held high, carrying within her unfaltering hope and a quiet, steadfast confidence in life's unpredictable rhythm. In reconnecting with truth, she'd unveiled the essence of her identity, an indelible part of the world no longer shadowed by its opulent illusions.